My objectives for this evening are to combine research, my experience, and faith in our Catholic Catechism. Neuroscience already has confirmed that depression, anxiety, and self-esteem all suffer when we attach our children to phones, in particular, social media. I've been working with kids and families since 2008, and every year, more and more, we see an increase in these problems that is very clearly correlated to an increase in the amount of time they're spending on the internet. And they are more and more disconnected from their own hearts, their inner life, the people around them, a sense of purpose, and from God and from faith. And the Catholic Catechism mirrors all of this. This kind of explains why the science says what it does. Because we were made in the image and likeness of God, and we have the capacity for authentic relationship and communion with other people and with Jesus, and not with random non-beings on the internet. But it mirrors that. It's an inauthentic version of these relationships. So if I do my job right tonight, every couple of minutes you're going to think to yourself, this feels like common sense. And that's because it is. It feels true because it is true. You don't have to be a therapist to recognize that something is wrong when kids are more depressed, more anxious, having suicidal thoughts, engaging in self-harm, engaging in substance use, engaging in impulsive behavior. They talk about themselves primarily in the way that other people see them, as opposed to in who they are on the inside. They're comparing who gets more screen time and when. They live for the screen time. When silence is unbearable and boredom is treated like an emergency. The reason that you feel that this is true is because you're not paranoid. This is the Holy Spirit, and this is your parental instinct telling you the truth. Our kids were not made for this. This is not normal, and we don't need to expose them to it. And Scripture speaks to this reality as well. Obviously, it was written, millions of years before we had the internet. Maybe not millions. I'm not an anthropologist. Father Shanowski will tell you. But many, many years before the internet was invented, Scripture was already speaking to this. We are made to be fully known by authentic community and by God in our families. And social media offers only curated images and fragmented profiles. No wonder our kids feel anxious and lonely. What's interesting is they want you to think that the more connection we experience on the internet, the better off we are. But in reality, we're worse. Every single study will show you that. Minute for minute, an increase in social media use correlates with an increase in depression and anxiety. And there's no way around that. They're connecting, but they're not truly present. And deep in their hearts, they feel unsatisfied and they don't know why. They don't need to know why. They're the kids. It's our job to know why. And then we lead them down the right path. Throughout, we have nice little scripture passages that kind of inform what's coming next. So you can reflect on that. The truth is our kids' hearts are restless because they are seeking infinite love and infinite worth and belonging in a place that only offers finite distraction and finite validation. The dopamine hit that you get from social media immediately fades. The likes disappear, the algorithm moves on. From day to day, you will get a different reaction from the internet. And the heart created for God remains unsatisfied because this is all artificial. So today I want to validate what you already know as a parent. Very likely if you gave your kid a phone already, and zero judgment because it's happened, and what's done is done, but probably you weren't happy about it. You probably agonized over the decision. And if you are already sensing that this was a mistake or something you don't want to do, your instincts are right, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you the research. You can explain why this matters if your partner isn't here tonight, or to your school community if you have other friends who couldn't make it and you're hoping they will wait till 8th, which is a really nice movement where you don't give your kid a cell phone till 8th grade. You can talk about this with your friends. I'm going to root this in Catholic teaching because this is not a parenting trend. It is about protecting the souls that God has entrusted to us. It is our job. And give you practical tools to reclaim your family's attention and time. And remind you that you're not alone. At least everybody in this room can support you in this. And trust me, there will be more. So let's begin. As Catholics, we believe that every person is created in the image and likeness of God, and our identity is a gift. And we can't earn that through our performance on social media. It gives us reason and freedom and capacity for relationship and love, but our children, their image and their personhood is being bought and sold without their consent on the internet. They're becoming users and content creators, when in reality, they are children of God with infinite dignity and worth. And this is who your kids are before they ever pick up a phone. This is something I've spoken with Maria about at length, because I'm a secular counselor. I'm not a Catholic counselor per se. When people bring up their faith in session, I'm able to talk about it. But typically, if they don't, I don't, for various ethical reasons. But there are many, many people, almost everyone I see, who struggles with self-worth. And these are adults as well as kids. And what I really wish I could say to them, there's like a shortcut to this. There's like a shorthand to self-worth. And it is that you are inherently valuable because you were created by God and there is no mistakes there. And if you already knew that, you could like leapfrog over all the self-doubt. But unfortunately, not everybody has access to that message. Regardless though, Maria has told me that if I love them, then that is Jesus loving them through me, which I think is lovely. And so that's what I have to do when I can't talk about it. But the kids need to get that message however they can get that message. So this is just a graph to show how social media use is drastically increasing. The most important key findings here: 46% of teens are using the internet almost constantly. Many schools are allowing the phones to be carried around with them for emergency purposes, or maybe because they know they can't fight the good fight in this case. 35% of them are on at least one of the top 5 platforms almost constantly. 97% of teens are using the internet daily, and probably not for research. 95% of them have access to a smartphone. So again, only increasing. Catholic educator Alvaro De Vincente warns our kids are living through an attention apocalypse because they're pulled out of reality and their eyes are glued to their phones. I was speaking to a mom over the weekend who wanted to come and couldn't make it tonight. And she said, oh, my sister has older girls and they had a sleepover this weekend, and there were like 10 girls and 2 of them brought cell phones with them. And they thought they were the coolest girls in the room, but all the moms felt sad for them because they missed everything. All the little jokes, all the little moments of girlhood that you remember when you were a kid, they're not even experiencing it because whoever is in front of them is less important than who's on this phone because they're addicted. And that's not their fault. The phones are made to be addictive. We are victims of that, but we don't have to let our kids be victims of that. When a teen's attention is constantly captured by notifications, by scrolling, they invented something called infinite scroll, which the first place you ever probably encountered that was Pinterest. Remember, like the page, you didn't have to click like page 2, page 3. So you used to be able to say like, when I hit the end of the page, I'm done. But Pinterest was like, nah, you're never really done. And that's on Instagram now, that's on TikTok. It's all infinite scrolling. Kids don't have any self-control. That's age appropriate. They cannot notice God's presence, the people in front of them, or their own inner life when they're constantly caught up in what's happening on their phone. So key question for parents. This is about your kids, but it's really also about you because we lead the way, right? Anything we do, they do. They don't hear anything we say, they see what we do. If my child's attention or your attention is the most valuable thing you have, who or what is owning it most of the day? God and real people or a screen? And they'll tell you, well, there are real people on there, they're my friends. And maybe they are, maybe they just talk to their friends. But if you've noticed, how many of these kids can look a person in the eye and have a conversation? You know, where they're losing an essential piece of community. When we forget that we're made in God's image and forget who we deeply are, we look to outside sources, including social media, to tell us who we are and what we're worth. Instead of receiving identity from God and our families, we chase it through the internet and the dopamine hits of the likes and the follows and the views. And not to mention the comparison that comes with that when your friend posts the same picture and gets more. Over time, that always makes depression, anxiety, and loneliness worse, even though they're online almost constantly, so they're connected, right? So why is it making it worse if they're connected? This is Pope Leo. Probably the first pope to ever say the word algorithm in a speech. Technology must serve the human person and not replace, obscure, or diminish the human face and voice. That's all the phones do, right? There's a big difference between FaceTiming grandma in Florida and texting on Snapchat things that will immediately disappear and have no real meaning in their lives. This is just a brief overview of the things that we see in the mental health world that are the effects of social media use. All of these things are increased as a result of social media use. Anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, sleep issues, inadequacy feelings, fear of missing out, cyberbullying, self-absorption, and this is not an exhaustive list. The Catholic lens tells us this is what happens when a heart that's made for real love and real connection is fed with judgment and comparison. And a child's value starts to be measured by appearance and popularity, and again, how many likes. And then the truth that they're already loved and they're already chosen is completely pushed to the background. This is just a little brief overview of what the vicious cycle of social media use can look like. They feel sad, they feel lonely, so they get on social media, and then they feel like they're with people, but then they're feeling isolated. They feel like they're missing out. They feel jealous. They feel more depressed, more anxious, and they keep scrolling to look for the next thing. And the cycle just continues. The spiritual version of this is, again, looking for connection and validation and not being able to find it, and constantly seeing carefully edited versions of their friends and or even, influencers, and feeling even less enough. And they start to believe lies about their identity. I'm only as worthy as the people on here think I am. I only matter if I'm noticed. I'm lovable if I look a certain way. And that makes it harder to believe the truth that we are loved simply because we bear God's image. And then they reach for the phone again to try and find another way to feel better. Screens are stealing our kids' attention, their presence, and their reality. And actually, they're doing the same thing to the parents. And we are the models for our children. Dave Enchente, once again, he points out the solution is much more than getting rid of screens. Right now, the problem that we're talking about is social media. This is a massive problem in our society, but this is not the only problem that we have. It's not the only addictive behavior we see in society, obviously. And so you can apply this information to anything else your family may be experiencing. That's taking them out of reality and taking them out of real life. And as they get older, I remember my kids were little and I was so stressed about germs, and then I was stressed about sleep, and I was stressed about safety, and I was always so anxious about something. And I remember a mom said to me, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And I was like, is this supposed to be helpful? I can't take much more of this. But they're right. Before you know it, it's going to be, they're trying to drink, right? Because if they're looking for an escape, alcohol is a great escape, right? And drugs are a great escape, and spending money and finding worth in a romantic partner and engaging in behaviors that do not actually bring them any more than just a momentary dopamine hit. So the goal is to bring our kids back to real life, real people, real conversations, real responsibilities. Give them a reason to get off the phones. This is the dopamine reward loop. Dopamine is, just briefly, the learning chemical in our brain. It brings us a feeling of happiness, and it also teaches our brain what's important. And when we engage in artificial dopamine behaviors, it hijacks our brain, and it tells our brain that these things are more important than the slow drip dopamine of time with friends and reading a book and walking in nature, things that bring us slow, gradual dopamine, but it's much longer lasting. The dopamine loop and the desires of the heart. So the dopamine loop explains why our brains keep reaching for that quick hit of a notification. Again, it's not the kid's fault. It is how their brains scientifically work. But spiritually, our hearts are wired for something deeper, to be known and truly seen. And that will never happen online. You'll hear influencers say, I've built such a wonderful community on here. It's so beautiful. You're so supportive. And I don't doubt that they feel that way. And many times they are. They're having many supportive comments. But no, they don't know you. They don't deeply know you. Only the people in your real life can deeply know you. And sometimes kids are tempted to have these people deeply know them, and then they start posting too much information about themselves. And this leads to even greater problems. So this is on the handout, so don't feel like you have to jot this down, but this is helpful. How to reclaim attention from the dopamine loop and how to move from that addiction to the screen to freedom. So first we acknowledge the design. They're designed to keep us addicted. We're being manipulated. If you recognize that, we're on the right track. Create friction between the want and the behavior. This works with any behavior you want to stop. So, for example, if you're trying not to spend money, you have to disable your Apple Pay and make it a little tougher to shop online, right? You have to stop saving all the credit cards and all the websites, because then you have to stop and think about it before you do it. So to create friction, you delete the apps off the phone, and then you have to log in on the website, which takes a little longer and requires authentication, and 5 times you have to write the word because you keep getting it wrong. And that helps you think, do I really want to do this? Or is this just a habit I'm engaging in? Also, you can set timers on your phone, like a limit, and you can say, in 30 minutes, this is going to go off and I'm going to acknowledge that time has passed. So replace, don't just remove. Especially for kids, you don't just say, get off the phone. They're like, what do I do then? Give them some ideas. Well, here's what else you can do. You can read a book, you can draw a picture, you can play outside, you can call your friend, you can bake something with me, right? You can do Legos, I don't know, take a nap. Anything else, anything else. And it really helps to teach them how to self-reflect. What are you trying to get out of this? Because sometimes we're doing one thing and it doesn't actually resolve the problem. Practice in patience. This comes with everything. Nothing's going to happen overnight. And root it in identity. This is not what you were made for. That's why it's not deeply satisfying. That's why you always need more. Anything that's truly satisfying, we're content with enough. Things that we need more all the time, there's a reason for that. And attention is not neutral. This is another thing. It's important for kids to know this, but more importantly, we have to know this first. Whatever we give our gaze to shapes our desires. They're going to covet the things they see online, and they're always going to feel less than. And from a Catholic lens, attention is close to worship. So essentially, the longer they're spending on their phones, they're essentially worshiping social media, worshiping what other people have, and completely disregarding any time for themselves, for God, the people we love, prayer, reflection. This is just a breakdown of the secular perspective versus the Catholic perspective. I'm not going to go through all of it. I know it's a lot of information. Just most importantly here, in my opinion, look, I have a little pointer. Where your attention goes, your love follows. I think this is really important. And by the way, kids, very little kids, they interpret attention as love. So if you are staring at your phone when your kid is trying to engage with you, maybe they don't know how to intellectually put words to this, but it's, mommy loves my phone more than she loves me, And I'm guilting myself when I say that too, because my son Louis tonight was like, maybe you'll learn something from this presentation that you're giving. And I was like, I'm on my phone because I'm working, but he's got a point. I understand. And so this is not an attack. I'm just human too, of course. Where your attention goes, your love follows. And it kind of works both ways. Pope Leo's challenge, again, do not let the algorithm write your story. Your attention belongs to God first, then the people he put in your life. So guard your attention carefully. I just included this because I just love it. I love Carlo Acutis. I think he is, the coolest millennial saint. Is he the only millennial saint? The first, anyway. 15 years old, and this is what he said about the internet. We're in it up to our necks. We risk being pulled under. It's a vortex which swallows everything up. It's the opportunity to put the Eucharist into the vortex. For those of you who don't know, Carlo Acutis, 15-year-old saint, he was just canonized, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago. He's from Italy, and he took his Catholicism and he made a website that honored the Eucharist. And he was like, well, if the millennials, if these young people are going to be on the internet anyway, I might as well give them something to look at that's worth looking at. And I think this is a really important thing that he said, this dichotomy here, because it's not just our job to pull them off the internet. We have to live in reality. This is like the just say no culture that never really worked. You have to tell them no, but you also have to give them guidelines for if and when it eventually becomes yes. Because it will eventually become yes. They have to have a phone sometime. They have to get on the internet sometime. And you want them to know how to live their most wholehearted version of themselves, a version that will make them proud of themselves, when they're on there. So when they're too young, and when they're old enough, you have to guide them. Hello. Social media teaches our kids to indulge in nothing but instant gratification, immediate feedback. You post a photo, instant likes, constant novelty. Again, that infinite scroll, quick dopamine hits. Every single swipe brings a micro reward. People used to watch YouTube primarily. That was considered the the least harmful version of social media on the internet. I don't really see YouTube as social media. There are comments, but most people don't even read them. That used to be considered the least damaging. But now they have YouTube Shorts, which are really, really short, and TikTok videos are as short as 5 seconds long. So aside from all the other things we're talking about, their attention span is nil. No waiting required. Everything's available now, including like the shopping online. Like, you're looking at Instagram, looking at TikTok, this person's wearing something, they're linking it, you click it, you buy it, it's immediate. And effort-free entertainment, passive consumption, no work needed. None of this is natural to our human state. And again, all science backs this up. Even if this was a room full of atheists, this would all still be true, because this is science. This is how our brains are wired to work, and this is why it's not good for us. The faith just backs up all the science. So the problem is this trains young brains to expect rewards without effort, connection without vulnerability, and satisfaction without patience. Everything is now, and everything is short-lived. Research shows the more kids engage in instant gratification, the harder it becomes to do anything that takes a long time. So if you notice your kid gets frustrated because they're not good at something right away and they immediately want to quit, that is, it's universal, it's always been, but it's only getting worse with the advent of social media. They can't focus on long-term goals. They can't delay rewards for greater outcomes. There's slow, meaningful work that they're losing satisfaction in, and they don't know how to build deep, long-lasting relationships because they actually require time and effort. They're not just like friends online. Oh, I just thought this was such a nice quote. This is from the Catholic Answers magazine. Boredom is the doorway. On the other side, who knows? Parents should be encouraged in this. The best parents know not to keep the child constantly busy, even with good things such as sports and teams and classes, because without learning to deal with boredom, all the skills the child develops will be attached to a skeleton. Isn't that amazing? I love that. Give me a little chills. Okay, so we were designed for deep connection and not quick hits. And you can feel the difference. If you have friendships or relationships in your life that are deep, true friendships, they feel different. Real relationships require time, presence, and vulnerability. By the way, the internet does not encourage vulnerability. You're supposed to come across as very together, very poised, and you have everything. And that is not reality. Authentic community is built through shared experiences and sacrifice. Love is patient, love is kind. This is much of the same. Character is also built through perseverance, patience, and waiting on God's timing. And the greatest goods in life take time to cultivate. So faith, virtue, wisdom, love, these are not things that happen overnight. We are called to meaningful labor, and satisfaction comes from contributing, not just consuming. And that doesn't just mean posting online as well. It means contributing to the actual world around you. That is what will feel genuinely fulfilling. Oh, Maria sent me this quote. I like this too. The desire for God is written in the human heart because man is created by God and for God. God never ceases to draw man to himself. Only in God will he find the truth and happiness he never stops searching for. So I think this is a really important little note because we as parents, people will, you always hear the quote, put your oxygen mask on first before you help the person next to you, and that even applies to parents. The thing is that if we are not deeply peaceful and deeply purposeful, neither can your kids be. It's not possible. We can't teach our kids to be things that we are not. And so the more peaceful we feel, the more we feel fulfilled by the things that our heart genuinely needs, the more our kids can access that as well. They're not just copying our example, they're mirroring our emotions. Something really important when we talk about desire, I think the word desire kind of gives the impression that that's like a bad thing. And actually, it's not. Desire is given to us by God. It is a good thing. Every human heart is wired to seek fulfillment, connection, and joy. That is good. It points us toward God. The problem is when we seek it in the wrong places. And it hijacks our God-given desires when we're on social media, offers counterfeits. It's the illusion of popularity, the illusion of validation, the illusion of distraction, instead of what we're really looking for, which is belonging and love and peace. And God offers those things: lasting joy instead of fleeting pleasure, deep healing for our wounded hearts, true identity rooted in His love, and deep rest for the restless. The virtue of temperance I felt was important to mention here. In therapy, we call it self-control. It is the ability to moderate our desires. Again, to recognize when we want something and if we need to have it instantly gratified or if we can work toward it slowly. And faith, by the way, is always going to be a slow-paced process. Temperance helps us master our impulses instead of being mastered by them, and helps us to say no to instant gratification and immediate pleasure for the greater good. And it builds that spiritual muscle that we need to resist the pull of constant stimulation. And it teaches us how to do all the opposite things that we need to do to build temperance. How do we do it for our children? How do we build temperance in our kids? We model delayed gratification in our own lives. So you learn how to do this yourself, and then you do it for them. Create waiting experiences, and then you make it known to them, right? Like, even if you don't technically need to. So like, for example, our kids really want to go to Disney World. Honestly, Arthur is 7 and all he does is whine when his legs hurt whenever we're on the boardwalk for like 2 hours. For what I've heard, Disney World's like a 12-hour marathon. It's like not for us at this time. And we told him that. But also we have like a massive jug of coins in our closet, and we're like, put it in the Disney fund. And like, to them, they're learning that, you have the money? Done, right? Like, oh, you want to go this weekend? Done. Like, not everything works like that. Not everything should, even if it can. It not always should. So you create a waiting experience. Work towards something. Anticipate something. Make it worth the wait. Practicing a skill over time. You're not going to get good at an instrument today. You're not going to get better at drawing today. You're not going to get better at reading today, but you can incrementally work toward these things. Again, social media doesn't encourage any of this. Practicing fasting. Lent is coming up. A little challenge to go low screen or no social media. And again, we need to be making this stuff obvious to our kids. A lot of parents in therapy will ask me, well, how should we address this? Like, should we just like kind of keep it quiet? Like, not about social media, just about anything they're working on. And I always say, like, put it all on the table as much as you can in an age-appropriate way. If you're working on stopping so much screen time, don't hide that like flaw from your kids. Tell them, you know what I've noticed? I spend too much time on my phone. I'm going to delete this app, and I want you to tell me when you catch me on my phone too much. And then what are you going to give up? You know, it's like a nice way to be a little more open with them about that we're all growing and changing and working on ourselves. And celebrating effort, progress, and perseverance, not just outcomes. It's very easy to focus on the grades or the time you had in a race or the number of home runs you hit or whatever. And of course, we can celebrate that stuff. That's wonderful stuff. But also, sometimes it's more helpful for a child to hear, you must have worked so hard. I can see how hard you tried. You really had a healthy mindset when you were doing that. I noticed that you wanted to give up and you didn't. That must have been really tough. So obviously, it seems easiest and simplest and calmest in the household not to discipline. But of course, it does not benefit our kids and it does not benefit us. There is a spiritual danger of constant stimulation that comes from the phones. When we're never bored or quiet or still, we cannot hear God's voice because God's voice speaks in a quiet, small, still voice. And constant noise and stimulation drown that out. We can't recognize our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own conscience. Half the time, people don't even know what they think anymore. They think, let me ask AI, let me look online, let me check what they say on TikTok about it, let me read the reviews. I mean, reading reviews is, I guess, fine, but you know what I mean. The point is, like, reflect first before you immediately turn to the external. We lose capacity for contemplation and prayer. Every single client I've ever had has said to me, I can't meditate. It's impossible. And I'm like, yes, extremely hard, especially if you're, like me, I have like a lot of thoughts. And I can yap for quite a while. And it's hard to just like be quiet and get your brain to be quiet. It doesn't help that you can constantly turn to your phone. I remember the first time I noticed this about myself, it was right after I got my first iPhone, which was like, 2008. And it was broken, and I brought it to AT&T and I handed it over to them, and then I reached into my pocket to take it out to look at it while I waited. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening. I'm addicted. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it was possible. Now there's like rehabs for like social media addiction. And our brains are trained to flee discomfort by reaching for a phone. We can't just sit with ourselves. We can't sit with God. We can't sit with our feelings. And again, when we talk about addiction, we do not want to train our children to run from their feelings. That's what addiction is. It is, I can't sit in this discomfort. I must feel something else, or I must feel nothing at all. And we lose awareness of the present moment. Again, those girls at the sleepover, like they weren't even there. They might as well have stayed home. Like, that's such a shame. They missed out. I worked the middle school dance this week, and I was very, very impressed. I actually felt like they were like there. Like, were they taking videos and stuff? A little bit. But like, honestly, like they were there. They were present. There were like 175 kids there. They were being silly. They were, there's a thing that they talk about now about fear of being perceived that I'm 41. So my generation and all older, we did not grow up with that because there weren't video cameras or whatever they call them now in everyone's hand, filming them and potentially embarrassing them. We could just act how childlike we wanted to when we were children, and it wouldn't have been embarrassing. Now, kids are aware. I am always being perceived. And somehow at this dance, I just felt like they didn't care. And I loved to see it. I was very impressed with the middle schoolers. When attention is constantly fragmented, we lose our grip on what is real. I love this quote. This was so good. They're getting anxious because they're not living in reality. Like, this is exactly it. Because what's happening around them probably is not what's making them anxious. If a child comes to me and they're anxious about the big test tomorrow, that's not anxiety disorder. That's normal. That means you care. I was very anxious before tonight. An hour ago. I was like shaking in my boots. But that's because I care. That's normal. That's not a disorder. Although I have that too. But we're being honest tonight, right? Vulnerability. But they're anxious about the likes online and how much time they get. And my mom took away my phone. And now I don't know what's happening on Snapchat. And I can see all their locations and they're there and I'm not there. And it's like, this is not what you are intended to know or see or care about. This isn't even real. So, how do we form kids for patient, purposeful lives? And how do we counter instant gratification culture? You have handouts on this, so don't stress. Some really good ideas for at home. So, I love this graphic too. Look, they're all just praying to the God of Wi-Fi, right? Build in waiting rhythms. So, no phones at the table. Car rides without screens. I know that is challenging. I understand. My sister-in-law lives 4-ish hours away in Southern Maryland. Do my kids have iPads in the car? Yes. It's not all they're going to do because that would drive all of us crazy, and then they act nuts. I'm sure you all know how your kids act when they're on the screens for too long. It's unwell. Teach them to sit with boredom. This is where creativity, imagination, and prayer begin. I'm sure you've noticed kids are like, I'm bored, I don't know what to do. And you're like, how is that possible? They don't even know how to spend their time. And it's our job to teach them, right? If they see, well, what do you do when you're bored? Oh, you stare at your phone? Okay. So then why wouldn't I do that, right? But like they see, like, oh, you read a book, you do a craft, that's pretty much what I do. I read a book and do a craft. But people bake, people cook, people, make sourdough, whatever. They can see that you're engaging in actually purposeful, productive things. Oh, you know what my family does? We play like infinite board games. We are obsessed with card games. We play Yahtzee. We play tons of board games. And my son wanted me to mention tonight, actually, Louis, he's in 2nd grade, that we only do iPads on the weekends. We do 1 hour on Friday, 1 hour on Saturday, and that's it. And the rest of the week, no iPads at all. They're not theirs. They're my iPad and Keenan's iPad. They're our work iPads. And this week, Louis made his own board game. And I was like, this is so cute. It was basically, he copied Monopoly. It's like definitely a trademark violation. But I was very impressed. And he goes, you should talk about this tonight. Look what I do when I don't have an iPad. And I was like, you're right, buddy. Celebrate long-term projects. Again, like learning an instrument, incremental gratification. Like you're not going to learn the song today, but like what can you learn? Training for a sport. I loved growing a garden as an example here. Like nothing teaches you patience like growing a garden. I am trying to like propagate my plants, and I check every single day if they have roots. They still don't, by the way. And it's been 2.5 weeks. I think they may be dead. But things like this take time, and that's good for kids to learn, right? And modeling patience with yourself. Resist the urge to fill every quiet moment with your phone, right? Sometimes you can just sit there, alone with your thoughts. Imagine. In faith formation, this is built into the church. And this is really interesting because, again, it all goes together. Like the science works with the faith, works with what you already intuitively know as a parent. The value of liturgical time. Advent is a waiting period. Lent is a waiting period. The whole church year is like a slow unfolding. Introducing contemplative prayer practices. So things like adoration and praying the rosary, things that are not like a quick glory be. Sometimes things take time. Prayers don't come true overnight, right? So that's a really good lesson for kids. Emphasize that holiness is a lifelong journey. It's not a quick achievement. And the stories of the saints can be really great. We had like a little book of saints when we were young. We would always read them. Some of them are like pretty graphic for kids. Like the martyr ones are a little yikes. But that's cool. It's good for them to see like struggle is normal. Challenges are normal. Waiting is normal. And in school and activities, I don't know if there's any teachers in the room or other people who work with kids in other capacities, but teachers are already doing this. They have like projects that last several weeks. Even like second grade, like they're doing a president project right now, like they already started working on it. It's not due for a few weeks. It just like teaches them patience. Deep work over multitasking. We all it's like a badge of honor to be very busy nowadays, but it's very toxic. I am guilty. Reward sustained effort, not just immediate results. Create opportunities for kids to experience mastery through practice, and limit quick win activities. So like the video games, I could do a whole other talk on the video games. There's like really great information on how different the video games are. If you've noticed this, like if you played Pac-Man or even like Sonic when you were younger, or like Tetris, like there's an end, there's like a clear end to the game, and then you win. But that's not how it is anymore. They have it's like a never-ending game. They have a map at the top that tells you where to go, so there's no spatial relation memorization required. And they reward you for every day you log in. You get more points and more coins and more lives. It's a casino. It's bad. It's bad for the kids. It's bad for the adults. Okay, so what did Pope Leo say about this? He gave a really cool talk if you watched it. All communication technology must serve the human person and never reduce people to objects, data, or products. We already are. They're making money off of us. Everybody who runs it, I don't want to bring up the Epstein files, but you know how corrupt, it's corrupt. Everybody who runs it's making money off of us, and they're making money off our kids. It becomes easy to forget that behind every profile is a face, a story, and a soul, loved by God. And every medium must respect human dignity. Has anyone here ever been on a social media platform that respects human dignity? I don't think so. They're trapped in an echo chamber, reinforcing their own preferences and projections and leaving them alone with themselves. This intensifies isolation. Again, they feel like they're in a community, but they're not. And I will tell you, I teach, I see young adults too, and I teach them how to adjust their algorithms because it's really important. The ones with health anxiety, video after video of, I went to 25 doctors and everyone said I was fine, and the 26 said I had cancer. And they're like, I can't take it anymore, and we have to learn how to reroute the algorithm so they can because they're not going to delete the app. So we teach them how to use it in a healthy way. Well, these kids don't know how to do that. All these kids know is what I see is reality. And if they're depressed, even if you don't engage with the videos, the longer you watch them, the more your algorithm thinks you're interested in them. And it shows you more of that. And then before you know it, it's like, see, everybody's depressed. Everybody feels this way. It's not just me, it's everyone. It's not everyone. It's everyone on their feed. Right. So it just mirrors how we're already feeling. Pope Leo tells young people, and you can tell your kids this, faith thrives in community, not isolation. Everything does, by the way. everything thrives in community. Seeking authentic friendships and real life relationships instead of caring more about who's on the phone. Bless you. Don't let the algorithm write your story. I love that. The algorithm is essentially, if anybody doesn't know, there is like an AI-driven technology that recognizes what you're interested in through all the things you do online on any website, unfortunately, what you talk about in front of your phone, and what you engage with, whether you like it, share it, or just look at it for a long time and watch the video, and then it cultivates a page that is tailored to you. And there are ways to do this so that things go really well. If you watch the right things, you can have a very positive experience online, but kids are not capable of this because they're children. Screens and platforms are tools, and the moment they tell us what a person is worth, we've stepped outside the plan for communication. We can use them as tools. Pope Leo is very specific about this. He doesn't want us to get rid of it. They can be very, very good. A lot of you found out about this online. That is a good thing, right? There's tons of positive things online. But as soon as they feel like a number, which is how these kids feel, we have a problem. He talks a lot about digital discernment and really understanding things like AI and the algorithm, because your kids are going to come back to you and tell you they saw these things, and you have to understand what it means and how to respond to that. And Pope Francis also talked about this, and I mentioned it earlier. Self-harm, youth distress, suicide, depression, anxiety, it's all up. And we need families, schools, communities, and the church to build a village of education centered on the person, to try and give them a reason to get off the screens. Again, can't just take them away without replacing them with something else. Some mental health warning signs and spiritual warning signs that social media is impacting your kids. I'm not going to go through all of these, there's a billion, but essentially your kid's acting completely different. The mood is not good. Many times you're going to think, well, this is just like being a teenager, but teenagers don't have to be miserable. That's just like something that we've decided as a society. It doesn't have to be that way. No time for prayer, no time for self-reflection, talking about themselves mainly in terms of appearance or achievement or popularity, and harsh self-talk that contradicts what we know that God says about us. Things like, I'm worthless and no one would care if I disappeared. There's a lot of like passive suicidal ideation. So maybe they're not saying like, I want to die, but they're like, nobody would care if I wasn't here. I wish I could just disappear. And this is a moment to gently remind your kids, that's not how God sees you. Some practical steps to protect your kids from cyberbullying. This is not me blaming the victim. Obviously, it's the bully's fault always, but we have to protect our kids from this as much as we can. So we teach them to think before they post and know that whatever they post is there forever. We manage their passwords. We review the privacy settings. Friend your kids or follow your kids. Encourage them to tell you if anything online makes them uncomfortable. No secrets. And then on the flip side, teaching them once they're old enough to be online, what is Catholic digital citizenship? Even people online who you disagree with, they're still made in the image of God too. So even if they're saying the most horrendous thing, reflect before you respond. Does this reflect the way that Christ teaches me to treat others? And they can always come to you with anything that makes them feel ashamed or scared or less than, and recognize that nothing online can erase their dignity or change how God sees them. But they should still be careful what they post, because it'll change how they see themselves. And Pope Leo reminds us to use it as an extraordinary opportunity for dialogue and evangelization. And then just make sure you notice if it's making you feel more isolated, more anxious, and more self-absorbed. Again, kids don't really yet have the capacity to self-reflect to that level. So that's going to be your job, to be able to say to them, you know, I noticed every time you get off the iPad, you are crying. Like, what's going on? Are you overstimulated? Are you sad? Are you left out? Are you just like, can't get pulled back into the real world? Like, it's our job to highlight this for our kids because they don't see it. Okay, here's concrete ways to modify your social media use and their social media use. First of all, the research tells us, UPenn did a study, even reducing it to 30 minutes a day gives us a significant reduction in all the negative side effects. As Catholics, we also know it's going to make space for the practices that remind kids who they really are. So things like family time, mass, prayer, time in nature, meals with family, real life relationships. I really thought this was good. We're not just taking their phones away. We're making room for the one voice that tells our kids the truth about themselves. They will believe whatever they read online about themselves. They believe everything their kids say, right? I mean, bullying happens offline too. Did I say their kids? I meant their friends, other kids, you know what I mean. Bullying happens everywhere, right? We don't need to the thing is about cyberbullying. Kids who were bullied used to go to school, get bullied, and then come home to hopefully a safe space where they got a reprieve for some time. Not anymore. Now they get bullied day and night and all weekend too, because it's nonstop online. If they're bullied, it doesn't end. And you see these horrific stories online about these kids who die by suicide, and they're like 13 because of the things that their friends have said about them online, friends, right? Kids don't have the ability to see it can get better. It's too far away. They just see right now, it can't get worse, and I can't take this anymore. Here's how you reduce your time online so you can set good examples for your kids. So I already kind of talked about this, but check your screen time, set a goal, set limits for your apps. Even if you ignore the limit, it pops up and it says, you've been online for 17 hours today. And you're like, ignore. At least you know it's been 17 hours, It's nice to know how much time has passed because time blindness is a real thing when you're talking about online. Make rules for phone use for yourself and for your family. Disable notifications. A lot of times if you don't have the notifications popping up on your phone, you're less prone to check the app. Remove the apps from your phone and then reflect. Always reflect on how you feel afterward. If it's supposed to be so great for you, why do you feel so bad afterward? I love this image, right? That's social media for you. Here's what to do for your kids. Monitor and limit your kids' social media use. This is once they're old enough to be on it. I would say 8th grade maximum. Even then, they're probably too young. I would say probably 8th grade is their phone because you probably need it for something. And then I wouldn't do any social media till high school. And I'd wait as long as you can. Talk to your child about underlying issues. So we can't ignore the fact that if they're already depressed or anxious or whatever, dealing with self-esteem issues, obsessed with their body or their weight, like these are things that are only going to get worse online. Enforce breaks. So like I said, in my family, we're like pretty strict about it. Other families are less strict, but I encourage you not to waver once you set your rules. Don't let them, if they beg, it doesn't, you can say as many times as you can say please a billion times. It won't change it. You know that already. Eventually they'll stop begging. Teach them that social media is not an accurate reflection of people's lives. You could even show them like a picture that you posted. Be like, look at this picture I posted. Look how cute you guys look. Remember how right before that you were hysterically crying? Or like, look how cute it looks. And then it's like, look what's right over here, like a pile of stuff that I moved out of the way to get a cute picture. Like just, jokey, but like remind them, like this is not real life. It's just a tiny moment, right? And encourage things that are offline, exercise, sports, spending time with friends, go ride a bike. I feel like kids don't even know how to ride bikes anymore and stuff. Things that involve real world interaction. When they have play dates, don't let them go on their iPad the whole time. Like do other things, right? Play a game, go outside, talk, God forbid. I like that one. Okay, this is really important. I really like this one. I do parent coaching a lot. I know I said every slide I'm like, this is really important. Everything I have to say is really important. A narcissist. This is just important for the parents in the room. So here's some very simple parenting skills to practice. Again, instead of being like, don't do that, here's what you can do instead. Don't make screens a reward. This creates a hierarchy that tells them, I know all this other stuff is terrible. But if you do it, you get the best thing, which is the iPad, right? Read a book so you can earn the iPad. It's like when we're like, eat the terrible broccoli so you can eat the amazing ice cream. Like they're not dumb. They know what you're saying. The screens are better. They're not. Make weekly mass a priority. Set limits and be consistent. Lead your children to the sacraments. Again, this teaches them a lot about waiting and slow processes. This is really big. Be on the same page as your partner. Who owns the phone? The answer is you before you answer. The answer is you because your kids are children and they can't own anything. Even if they bought the phone, it's your phone. How much screen time? You get to decide that. Your kids don't get to decide that. Which apps are allowed? Also your decision. And it can't be like, now if there's like divorce, or like the parents are on wildly different schedules or whatever. It can't be like, well, dad lets me. No, because then it stops being about the app is a problem, which is, it's supposed to be, in a family, it's us versus the problem. It's not me versus you, right? The app is the problem, but now they think mom's the problem because dad said yes, right? Now it becomes about something else. They have to share their passwords. That's a rule. I mean, I put a question mark to be nice, but they should share their passwords with you or they can't have the phone. You can check their phones. It's not invasion of privacy. Children don't really have online privacy. And anything they post online isn't private anyway, so if the whole world can see it, you can too. And you guys should disagree in private, you and your spouse. If you guys don't agree about the phones, you shouldn't have that conversation in front of the kids. Do that behind closed doors so they know you're in a united front, even if behind closed doors you're not. The kids need to think you are because they see the chinks in the armor. They're very clever. Helping kids reclaim their attention. So give them some chores. Make them hang out with their friends in real life. Real play with like things like toys or crafts or time outdoors. Screens are not a necessity and they're not a priority. Guard their attention. So delay it as long as you can. Model presence. You have to do this yourself. Show them whoever's in front of you is more important than whatever's on your screen. Help them form their interior life so they can live comfortable with silence and prayer and reflection and develop self-mastery, not just external control. In other words, if I don't get caught, it doesn't count, right? That's another like real addictive behavior. If nobody knows about it, it doesn't really happen. But that's not real. Real character comes from doing the right thing when no one will ever find out about it, right? And I can't read that. Oh, right. Just a little note about Pope Leo again. As you can see, I'm a big fan. I can't even read it. Call to technology and protecting. I read it. It's fine. Okay. So, and if you don't want to reduce your phone time and you're finding it hard to find motivation to do that, here's a nice quote to kind of remind you what the point is. Let everything take second place to our care for our children, our bringing them up to discipline and instruction of the Lord. So it's good for them if you do it. So do it for them, you know? If you must, scroll for 6 hours after they go to bed, but try not to let them see it. Don't do that. Some ways to build true confidence. Again, long list, you have it on the handout. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. This is just stuff that really matters. Nobody gets more confident because I got 100 likes on something. It genuinely, I promise you that will fade so fast. But learning things, positive friendships, being kind, engaging in other kinds of activities, a sport, a club, the art program, anything else they're into, push that, right? Getting praise for good behavior. All of it will build confidence and will build resilience. And they will be able to tolerate it when they say, everybody in my class has a phone but me. Oh, well. I feel like I always say I sound like my own parents. I'm like, I'm not their mother. But I'm not. And unfortunately for my kids, I know too much. So I'm never going to let them do these things because I know what can happen. And don't forget the sanctifying grace we receive when we receive the sacraments. Jesus is already doing the work for you here. So you know how they say, like, don't leave money on the table, don't leave opportunities on the table? There's grace right there. It's like the easiest shortcut to peace. We're almost done. So all of these resilience builders are ways that kids live out being made in God's image. And when we praise their effort and their kindness and their integrity, they root their confidence in who God made them to be instead of who the people on the internet think they are. Okay, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Right? This is so good. And it's like this, I mean, you've probably noticed, it's like no one's supposed to suffer. I mean, obviously, I don't mean like deep human suffering, but like boredom isn't suffering, but that's what kids think it is. No one's supposed to be inconvenienced. No one's supposed to put themselves out for anybody else. No one's supposed to be bored. No one's supposed to be left out of something. This is life. The kids have to learn to tolerate it. If they don't learn to tolerate it under your roof, they're going to have to do it somewhere else. You'd rather you be the one to teach them how to do it. So we have to do the hard, unpopular work of setting limits and protecting their attention and teaching our kids to look for something deeper than just the next dopamine hit. If you take anything away from this, this is my favorite. This is so important. Our job as parents is not to keep our kids entertained, comfortable, or happy at all times. Our job is to teach them how to cope when they aren't and to turn to God in all things. Every parent I talk to, not every parent, that's mean, but many parents I talk to, they bring their kid to therapy and they're like, fix my kid. They're so emotional. And like the problem is with the parent, because the parent can't tolerate the emotion. The kid's so sensitive and the parent can't handle it. And they're like, you need to stop this. I can't cope when they can't cope. So like, how is the kid supposed to learn it, right? You need to learn to cope with their emotion so they can learn to cope with their emotion. Growth is not comfortable. So our job is not to keep them comfortable all the time. Obviously, physically, yes, right? Health, safety, shelter, food, obviously. But emotional comfort is not always the answer. We can be comforting, right? They're sad, we comfort them, but we can't take it away, and we can't panic when they're emotionally uncomfortable, because that tells them, okay, one, I can't tell her anything because she freaks out, and two, this must be really bad, and three, she thinks I can't handle it. That must mean I can't, because she's my mom, she knows, right? So our goal really is not about when they're kids. They're kids for a very brief moment, sadly, right? It's to form them into adults who can do all of these things. Tolerate discomfort without fleeing into distraction. Love as God loves. Sit with boredom until creativity emerges. Delay gratification for something greater. Hear God's voice in the silence and build real relationships that last. And that require effort and sacrifice. So I'm a parent myself. As I mentioned, I know it is very hard to watch your kid be uncomfortable. I know kids can be extremely triggering, right? But the truth is, if we hand them a phone every time they're uncomfortable or bored or sad or restless, we teach them that their feelings are emergencies and we have to fix them immediately. And that trains them to be fragile, and it trains them to be afraid of their own God-given emotions, which are normal and natural. And they give us messages. Our feelings teach us things. If anybody watched Inside Out, your kids already know this. Your feelings teach you what's important to you. We need them. We cannot run from them. We cannot engage in compulsive, addictive, avoidant, impulsive behavior to feel better briefly. God designed struggle and waiting and boredom as the soil where our character grows. And when we remove all discomfort, we rob our kids of the chance to discover that they're stronger than they think and that God will meet them in the hard places. If we take it away from them, they'll never get there. And they can't be what they can't see, right? And this applies to everything we've talked about. But the most powerful thing we can do as parents is pray for our children. And if we are loved by God, we can love our children better because we have a deep sense of peace. And that makes it much easier to do anything. A brief note on when to consider counseling. So if your child is struggling with any of these things, or if you are, it's never a bad idea to reach out for a consultation. A good therapist won't take on any client just because it puts money in their pocket. They're going to talk to you and see if this kid really needs a counselor or they need something else. A really important note here, I always kind of say that unfortunately for these voluntary talks, often the people who need to hear them the most don't come because they don't even recognize the issues that they're struggling with. And I really feel that most about the bullied and the bully. I always see kids who are bullied, and I've been in practice since 2008. I've never had somebody come in and say, my kid's a bully and we need to work on it. And I wish we would. But it's just a note. If you have a child who struggles with being kind, they can go to therapy too. They don't have to be the one being bullied. And a therapist will be compassionate and kind and understand why they're struggling with this behavior and help them be better, because it's not a good life for them either. And don't forget the healing influence of the sacraments. These are always going to be there for you, and they either can supplement counseling or they can just be something that you do on a regular basis. So Eucharist, reconciliation, and anointing of the sick. People think of anointing of the sick as like what you do before you die, but it's actually for anyone who's struggling with something really significant where they really are like spiritually unwell. And it's available. And here's our discussion questions. I'm just going to skip to them. Oh, yeah, I'm going to skip that because we have them on a paper. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No? Really?
Excellent.
Thank you. Here's my contact info. Thank you. Thanks, guys.